Kevin Pelton, ESPN.com NBA insider, asked the question, why would LeBron James sign a longer deal? Why did he do that? He joins me now with the answer. It's been a wild month or so for the NBA. We saw Durant leave, and it seemed like he was, continuing this trend of guys just joining super teams. And then Russell Westbrook restored our faith in humanity, Kevin, by staying in Oklahoma City. Now we see LeBron decide, I'm going to not only stay, I'm going to stay for 2 years. What was the reasoning behind that for LeBron?
Yeah, I don't think there was ever any question that LeBron was going anywhere. There was like a brief second after they won the championship last June where people thought, well, now he's brought this long-awaited championship back to Cleveland. Now does he go play in a warmer climate or, with the members of the Banana Boat crew and, take advantage of that opportunity? But he never showed any interest in that. So really what this was is a matter of trying to maximize his salary. If he would have signed a 1+1 deal with the ability to opt out and become a free agent next summer, which is what he's been doing the last couple of years, he wouldn't have been able to collect his full max this year. By signing the 2+1 deal, 3 years with a player option on the last year, he makes more money this year, but does take a little risk. If something changes with the CBA and there's a much higher maximum salary next year, he might not be able to cash in then.
So realistically, because he decided the extra year, he is now the highest paid player in the league, something he would not have been had he not gone this route. Is that the way it works?
Yeah, and has never been throughout his career. This is the first time because of the fact that he took a little bit of a discount when he went to Miami, to form the Big Three. As a result of that, for a long time, he had never even been the highest paid player on his own team. And now, finally, he is appropriately the highest paid player in the NBA, although still dramatically underpaid compared to what he can make in a league where there was no maximum salary.
So currently, the maximum salary for next year is $33.4 million. But there's a CBA situation. So is he rolling the dice here?
A little bit. It seems like something that could be a logical change because, the players obviously have always objected to the idea of limits on salaries, and especially now that you have guys like LeBron, Chris Paul, other superstars in leadership positions in the union, it's something I think that Michelle Roberts may push for. At the same time, the owners might like to increase the maximum salaries a little bit because that makes it harder for stars to team up. They could do this. Durant could sign with the Warriors because he was able to make the same amount of money he would in Oklahoma City or anywhere else. Now, if all of a sudden he was eligible to make a higher percentage of the salary cap than he can now, that would be a lot more difficult sacrifice for him. So it wouldn't surprise me if there's a change, but at the same time, like I mentioned, LeBron is involved in the union leadership. There have been some talks going on leading up to the point where both sides have the opportunity to opt out of the CBA for after this season. So you'd think if that was definitely coming, he'd probably know, and it would have signed the one-year deal as a result.
What's this mean for Cleveland now? What are the implications for the Cavaliers with this deal?
Well, it cost them a little bit this season financially in terms of the luxury tax because they're paying LeBron a little more than they could. But obviously like to have him locked up, not have to worry about anything the next couple of years. And with this deal completed, the last bit of business for them basically is going to be re-signing J.R. Smith, who, there's no one else on the market who is both a contender and has enough cap space to offer him the $10+ million a year that they're reportedly offering. So it'd be very surprising to see J.R. go anywhere else at this point.
Talking with Kevin Pelton, ESPN.com NBA insider, ESPN.com here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. So LeBron basically 2 years more in Cleveland, and then he can opt out after the second year into that third year. But he's going to have to walk away from like $35 million, right?
Well, it being LeBron, he's always going to have that similar amount on the table. So I think the only scenario where he'd opt in is a case where, the salary cap doesn't increase as much as we're expecting it to, and that year-to-year raise ends up actually being more than his maximum salary. Otherwise, at some point, he probably will sign an extended contract with the Cavaliers. He's just been basically waiting to maximize that based on the continued growth of the salary cap.
Getting close to the start of the season. The schedule released yesterday. We know the Olympics are going on here. Team USA got us scared, but I want to go back to a couple of weeks ago and get your take, Kevin, now that the dust is settled. and explain to our listeners, your opinion on Russell Westbrook. Some would say, hey, kudos to him. He stayed. We all thought Durant was the good guy and Westbrook was the bad guy, and that's how it kind of looked. What is your interpretation? Is there a financial reason why Westbrook stayed, or was he a good guy in the end?
Well, there's definitely a financial benefit to it. He's got the chance to make more money this season because of the way that renegotiation and extension works. And then by adding one guaranteed year to his contract and a player option, he can hit free agency when he gets to 10 years of experience. And that's the point at which, the way the maximum salaries are set up, you go from being able to make 30% of the cap to all the way to 35%. So that's the biggest contract he could sign would be in the summer of 2018 when he's got a chance to be a free agent now. But it ultimately, for these guys, that's why they've bargained the right for free agency. They've earned the chance to play wherever they want. And I think after Durant's departure, Westbrook kind of doubled down on Oklahoma City and really wanted to show that he can be successful there without Durant.
Was that a surprise?
Not really. I mean, there was some reporting right after Durant had left that Westbrook wouldn't be interested in that renegotiation and extension. But the situation kind of changed when that salary cap projection for 2017-18 came in lower than expected. So that changed things both for LeBron and for Westbrook, because now it meant they could make more money this year without giving up almost anything next year, as opposed to if the cap had been higher next year, they would have been able to make a little bit more money had they opted out and been able to just re-sign as free agents.
What is the long-term, I don't know what long-term, maybe 3 to 5 years maybe, for Oklahoma? Is they basically, the sand slowly moving through the hourglass with them? I mean, is he basically giving them like an extension to try to figure out a way to replace Durant, or is he committed to them, do you think?
It puts the pressure on them still, I think, much as it was the last couple of years with Durant to, in this case, rebuild their lineup a little bit. They've gotten younger now, trading Serge Ibaka for Victor Oladipo, and I think they're probably still a playoff team this year. Then there's an interesting scenario where, if they trade Enes Kanter next summer, they could potentially clear max contract space. Doesn't look like maybe that's necessarily what they're going to do, because they gave a 2-year contract to Ronnie Price that eats into that a little bit as a backup point guard for them. So, maybe that's not what they're thinking, but either way, whether it's trade or free agency, trying to get another star to go with Westbrook and help convince him to stick around. But, he'll have a better idea of what their future looks like in 2 years, and so will they.
Any been watching the Olympics? First off, before I ask you a question about that, have you been watching a lot of the basketball?
Been watching all the USA games and then bits and pieces of the other games. Seen a little bit of Croatia and Dario Saric, which I'm sure is the most interest to Sixers fans.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you got a chance to see him, and do you have a thought? Because I think what you're seeing from him is kind of what you're hoping that you get as a guy that, is a hustle guy, a glue guy, an energy guy that scores maybe 13 points and has 8 rebounds and slides across the floor. Not a guy who's going to score 19, 20 points, but, in that 13 and 8 range with a lot of energy.
Yeah, I think his rebounding and his energy has actually been, I think, better than advertised in many ways. And then you also see the passing ability that is really one of the things that makes him special. And, he hasn't shot the ball well in the Olympics so far, although, it's such a small sample that it's tough to read too much into that 3 games, not shooting that well over that size. But, it does kind of reinforce, though, that he's got a very similar skill set to Ben Simmons, and the challenge for Brett Brown is going to be whether it's finding a way to use both of those guys together or put together a rotation so that you make sure that you have one of those guys out there at all times to take advantage of their ability to make plays even when they've got the ball in their hands.
Any idea why Simmons and Exum don't play for Australia?
Well, all the indications. Exum coming back from the ACL that he actually suffered last year playing for Australia. So I think they're just being overly cautious there, and he won't come back and play in a game until he starts training camp with the Jazz in a little bit here. In Simmons' case, by all accounts, unhappy that he wasn't part of the World Cup roster a couple of years ago when he was, I think, 17 at that point, and maybe not someone who would have helped them much in that competition, but might have made sense for them looking down the line to see how important he could be and get him involved at a young age. But I think at some point, down the road, you're going to see him with Australia. And it probably actually makes more sense in future seasons. First off, you've got the fact that he wanted to play Summer League and be with the Sixers this year right after getting drafted.
Right.
And then also the fact that, they've got this lineup that has worked pretty well for them with 5 NBA players as starters. I don't know if they'd really build their entire offense around Simmons the way you might be able to do in 2020.
The best sentence I've seen yet here, Kevin, I got an email from the Sixers announcing their schedule, and in the highlights section, when they list the Lakers, it says, leading Rookie of the Year candidates collide when Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, and Dario Saric host Brandon Ingram. Is this the Sixers' first admittance that, yes, in fact, you should be prepared for Joel Embiid to play? Are you taking that as they are expecting him to play?
Yeah, I guess it's one more step in the process, certainly closer than we've got at any point so far with him in Philadelphia. And, yeah, it seems like all systems are go on that. You never know because of the fact that he could suffer a recurrence at any point, but everything looks good so far.
All right, Sixers open the season October 28th against the Oklahoma City Thunder, 26, I should say. It's a Wednesday night right here on 97.3 against Oklahoma City without Kevin Durant. It will be the first time they play without Kevin Durant in their entire Oklahoma City existence in Philadelphia. And that game is on ESPN. The Sixers getting 5 nationally televised. Is that the Simmons effect or the Embiid effect or a little combination of both?
I think probably the Simmons effect when you look at, the attention on him during Summer League and all, inevitably is the number one pick. Embiid, I think it's probably more curiosity at this point, but certainly once we start seeing him out on the court, I think there's going to be a lot of interest in seeing what he looks like.
Who'd you have ranked as a higher prospect when they were coming out, Embiid or Simmons?
I don't know. I mean, Embiid, when healthy, I did think was the number one pick in that draft, so I guess I would probably lean slightly towards him.
Oh, well, there's some interesting debate back and forth. Which guy will be more impactful, Embiid or Simmons? Hey, it's a good one to have for Sixers fans who have had to watch not a lot of talent over the last 3 years. Kevin Pelton over at ESPN.com, at K Pelton on Twitter. Thanks, Kevin. Enjoy the weekend.
All right, thanks as always.